Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here live at 5 for a wonderful Saturday. Actually, it is officially spring. So happy spring. I'm just going to turn my phone on silent here. So what was today? Today was the Global Freedom Alliance protests around the world. And so I'm going to talk about that. Yes, we've got some jokes and puns stories. I definitely going to round the time together here live at 5 at the end with some of that. And we have something new, something I want to kind of bring to light for more people. Just kind of ties into our health, but it is something I have mentioned on here before at live at 5, but haven't mentioned it in a long time. So I wanted to bring that up as well. And yeah, so if you're new to live at 5, the idea is to talk about something completely different, something new, and then go into things that are inspirational or information, and then news, and then end with some fun, some laughter, some puns. And I found this book in my dad's possession, my stepmom's possession, and it is remarkable stories, true stories from what seems like could be as back as the 1800s. So how is everybody doing? It sure seems to me, before I get into this something new, that we have a number of people that are aware of what's going on, but still yet a number of people that have no clue. And it's interesting. It's interesting. It'd be just great if everybody were kind of like on an even kill, and you knew that the different sides were shared with people. And there you go. So I'm not sure if anybody's on here. I can't tell if this is private or public. Let me just see if it has anything. If you're on, I know it's a Saturday night. Only me. Aha. So we're going to make it public here. Let's see if that makes a difference. There we go. Okay. Well, welcome. Anyway, I know I started this a little bit, but it seems like Facebook had me on private. So I had to switch it. I was able to switch it over to public. I was just wondering why I wasn't seeing any numbers pop up. But here nor there, the usual setup for Live at Fives, we are going to talk about something completely a different new. It will be a completely different perspective on something. I'm actually going to talk about the experience with the protest today, and then the ABCs and the, what did I had all kinds of acronyms, PRSs and AMPs. We're going to talk a little bit about finances as well. I want to bring that up. I want to read you a paragraph out of the Anastasia book. So it's great. I mean, I'm probably a little exhausted because when I tell you about the protests, we feel like we walked, or I feel like I've walked 10 miles. But here we go. So happy spring. Again, happy spring. So today officially at some 5 a.m., 5:40 a.m. this morning, it officially turned spring. And it sure does feel like it. And you can see the first signs of flowers these past 2 weeks, which are typically snow drops. That's what they're called. They probably have a different name as well, but snowdrops is the name of that new flower. But let's get into it because there's a bit to talk about today, and there'd probably be a whole lot more if I had more time to read, but I spent most of the day at the protest. Let's talk about something new, a little bit different perspective on this wonderful insects, but actually insects in general. So this insect, completely new to most people when they're trying to think about what what the purpose of certain insects are, and this is the mosquito. Okay, so we have been led down a dirt path. I'm going to call it a dirt path, definitely not a rosy grass path, but a dirt path to say that mosquitoes are terrible. Mosquitoes are a big nuisance. Mosquitoes even spread disease, like as in the Zika. But you might have noticed, you might have or might not have read recently that the effects that the children were having were actually to do with the diphtheria vaccination. And that's what they were able to prove. Now, this will kind of lead into something else, but I want to circle back to mosquitoes. But I wanted to say that in a number of situations in the past, whether it was H1N1, even a little bit about SARS, and this, even particularly this event, and even the Spanish flu I've heard recently as well. At the end of the day, they have a certain test, or they assume you have it, based on your symptoms and, just what's going on, or they want you to believe fear, outbreak, this whole thing, outbreak, epidemic, pandemic, all seems to be contrived from people. But I'm just going to mention that, like the Zika virus, which they said was spread by mosquitoes, it was not that. It was the diphtheria vaccine. And I've heard this about AIDS recently as well, and this is more of the looking up the PCR test and listening to Carrie Mullis and his whole thing about never proven that HIV causes AIDS. How interesting that is. So, blaming it on another virus. And then you had the Spanish flu. Now, Spanish, because it didn't start there, but that's where I think the majority of the people, or a good majority of the people, got it, or maybe the worst outbreak there. But that actually wasn't that either. So at the end of the day, when they were able to the dust settled, they did further research into the Spanish flu and determined it was not all the Spanish flu. And then if you remember H1N1, and there was huge numbers that were coming out. And I learned as well, that one I particularly followed. And as they say, they joke, well, there's the front page news, but then there's also page 50 that, when the dust settles, or sometimes updates or whatever, they don't make front page news anymore. And that was with the H1N1 as well. I think it was, don't quote me, it's all these 90 numbers, like 98% of the people that they determined died of H1N1 did not die of H1N1 or did not have H1N1. They had the influenza. And talking to people thereafter, they had no idea. They were still stuck on the front page news. And this, my friends, is what we have happening here. Some of the information that's come through that I've even posted down other Live at Fives was the mere fact that a fella, Lab, and a couple of others as well, they had to take 1,500 1,500 positive PCR tests and determine that it was actually coronavirus, or whatever you want to call it, SARS-CoV-2. And it turned out that 80% of those 1,500 were influenza A, and the rest were influenza B. Just generally speaking, they could not tie it back to the SARS-CoV-2. So when they approached CDC to get some sort of further identification, to make sure that they were checking with the right thing, to make sure that they are discovering what it is, they didn't have any material for them to use. No isolated virus. So let's get back to the mosquito, because this is the fun thing I want to share with you. Mosquitoes actually have a purpose, like many other things have a purpose. And the mosquito actually is mini inoculator. So if you've ever heard of people in their own country where malaria is, and they are immune, the mosquito, again, was shed light on spreading it. But at the end of the day, these mosquitoes are actually mini inoculations, but they're nature's inoculations for you to have, to have immunity, as people are in their own country where malaria is. They're immune to malaria. And so anybody who's getting, mosquito bites, no matter where you are. Now, if we're just new to an area and we haven't got immunity, mosquito bites may be that little bit of immunity that you want, and not be so afraid of them. Because now I'm questioning everything. So the mosquitoes, and I'll give you an example. I was in South Africa for a month, but I went up to Zimbabwe, and we were at Victoria Falls, and we wanted to rough it, so I'm going to leave it as that. And we stayed in a series of cottages, and we had a 2-bedroom cottage. It was actually quite nice, big, and they forgot to sell us or rent us some mosquito screens which hook up to the ceiling on a hook, and they cover the bed. So my friend decided she was going to open the window. I didn't open any windows in mine, but she decided she was. When I woke up the next morning, I was bit probably about 100 times from my mid-thigh all the way down, to my ankles. But for some reason, not my face, but for the bottom legs. So multiple bites there. But nothing happened. I didn't get sick at all. Now, some people had mentioned, oh, maybe we should go and get this checked out. But then, nothing. So I don't believe that mosquitoes are a problem. When they say mosquitoes spread this and mosquitoes spread that, I'm now thinking that they're blaming it on the mosquitoes, but there's actually other things at play. Other things at play here. They blame it on the mosquito, and actually that is such a tiny amount that it may trigger something in the vulnerable perhaps, or maybe not. And there's a couple of other things that they talk about mosquitoes, that there's fear, but I'm sensing that such a little amount. And how I learned this is I was out with having I'll say a tea, because we're a coffee shop, but I had a tea, and I was with a native, and he was purchasing some of the raw seal oil, and we were just talking, and he's the one who mentioned that mosquitoes are nature's inoculators. So why not? Now, insects in general, from reading the Anastasia book, the Ringing Cedars, they talk about how insects can help us to clear our pores. So, well, then what would the body do? Detoxify better. So some of the bugs that bite, some of these bugs that might naturally bite in there might be breaking up the crystallization that happens in our cells. So how cool is that? Anyway, that is something new and something to consider about and not to be fearful of in that sense. So maybe if mosquitoes are attracted to you, maybe there's a reason, and that's a good thing. Anyway, nobody wants to think of them as mosquitoes as a very good thing, but that's that. So let's get into the news. I had a lot of things here, and I really wanted to talk about finances and money. And they're saying, money grows on trees. No, money doesn't grow on trees. You got to work hard for your money. And there's that other one that says money makes the world go round. And I want to say no to all of them. All of them. And I want to read a paragraph here from Anastasia. Now, this is, without getting too much into Anastasia, it's a very interesting read. If you can imagine people from millennia ago not being indoctrinated into the royalty as royalty was created, right? We didn't always have kings and queens. They were chosen. We didn't always have boundaries like we have now in countries. And so these are groups of people that lived in pristine origins, let's say, as in origins are natural origins, and how they thought, how they survived off the land and all of that. There's a lot of good information that comes through the Anastasia Ringing Cedars series. It's the main reason why I'm reading them this year in two book clubs. And I want to read this paragraph to you. They were the ones that thought up this concept of money. Money is like a high-tension zone. The forces of darkness are proud of this invention. They even think themselves stronger than the forces of light for having come up with money and for being able to use money to distract people from their true purpose. Okay, so money, money, money. How many people want more money? Probably more money than they need. And it doesn't buy happiness, and we know it doesn't buy health and all of those things, right? So that's that. And I wanted you to kind of understand that this book goes into greater detail about how it originally came about, the money, and it was a new form of slavery. Okay, so when there was slavery, definitely discontented. Oh, definitely. How can you not be discontented? You're having human nature's to be free. We're all to be free, and here you had slaves on this planet well before the African, for sure, of many different cultures, and they were unhappy. And as the story goes in the Anastasia, it's a little bit further on, they decided that they were going to let the slaves free, and they were going to pay them to work. Creation of money. Now they're slaves to money. Sure, they had their freedoms, but if you wanted a house, or if you wanted land, if you wanted services, goods, that you only saw that other people had, then you would want more money. So work harder and you'll get more money. And study and be indoctrinated in the different institutions of the way they think, and you're going to make more money. So that's really all I wanted to say about money, and that money has been a lot of, it has broken relationships, it's got tension. It definitely causes people to think they are less than, not worthy, different things like that. And then people to go down the path of not living their true nature, true purpose, to get the money. So there's all these teachings and plans and marketing and all of this kind of stuff, which, when I've said before, marketing is just psychological manipulation. It doesn't have to be. Marketing can be as simple as, here, I have a product, this is what it is. If you're attracted to it, you're going to buy it. If you need it, you're going to consider buying it. But they've really taken it to a greater level of psychological, because they got the understanding of the psychological understanding. So as this has been figured out, and then you have that. So there was a great, I don't know if I have it right here, but my cousin posted something. And if we're looking at the situation, let's just see if I could. No, I wouldn't have. I'd kind of have to look it up. But the gist of it was, now we can see just how Germany turned into Nazi Germany when we think about how many people today are following the instructions of authority. Right? Wearing the mask. I saw today a person had a J cloth, if you know what they are, underneath their mask, their disposable mask, and so on, and all the little children. Oh, must have been 4 or 5. Just kind of the protest. But let's talk about the protest. And I don't know if any of you good people were there. I did meet people from, I hugged strangers, just kind of connected with a handful of people. One person, she was from Stratford, came in from Stratford by herself. And she was actually a nurse, believe it or not. And she got wind of this and did her research and was completely going, what the hey, did her research and understood what was kind of going on. Another person from Keswick, and he was down on his own, and basically for him, he could say that, a lot of his family does not think like him, and when he says, when they say they're coming down to the protest, they kind of like disown them, or that kind of thing. This is what's happening. You got good people wanting to do the right thing, doing their research, and you have that. Another gentleman was from Bob Cajun. And he said, when there was a supposed breakout in the nursing home, and so many people died, the town was just on the edge. So they had them, they had them there. So it was so surreal, so surreal. And here in Toronto, I'm going to say it's probably 70% of the people. Now I'll drop it to 50 as far as it comes to outdoors. About 50% of the people are wearing masks. No question, but it's probably the majority. And inside stores, just about everybody but me. Everybody but me. And where I am, at the store I'm time, everybody else has masks. And they'll put it on just before they get there, or they're out wearing it all the time, so they don't even have to bother to take it off. But you can see people touching them, playing with them. All the things you're not supposed to do when you're wearing a mask. But there. So let's talk about the protest. It was at Queen's Park, and it was a lovely a lovely day for it here in Toronto, and the various countries that participate, I'm just going to mention that first. Worldwide Rally March 2021, Everyone Together for Democracy and Freedom. Germany, Poland, Italy, Spain, Austria, Switzerland, Canada, Australia, Latvia, Iceland, Israel, Ireland, Denmark, Netherlands, Serbia, Finland, Scotland, and England. So, for all of these good countries, they're stepping forward. They've done more research. A number of these people have done more research than the people who are putting the mask on, for sure. For sure, for sure, for sure. If I did a poll on that, or just asked people kindly if they had heard this, heard that, or whatever, I bet they're just going to shake their head. Now, the protests are to talk about the freedoms. That was key. No more lockdowns. That was key. Yet, there was one part of the protest, the march, where they landed in front of CBC and they were yelling out, "Tell the truth, tell the truth." And we're loud. I brought my dog with me today, so I moved back a bit and then went into kind of the courtyard, and I went around the back, and then they came up the street there, so I saw them. But as I saw them at a distance, I was waiting at the corner. It just so happened to work out fine. There was a cop there on a bike, and there was a Jeep, and with some young youth in it, I'm going to say, probably 20s, let's say. And they asked the police officer, "What's going on? What's going on?" And the police officer, all he says, "Well, these are, anti-masks and anti-vaccines." And he just leaves it at that. And I didn't say anything. He didn't know. He was just sitting there. The cop was just on his bike, because what they were doing is trying to be in front of the march. And they had to, because they changed the route, they had to play around so you can see them moving. So it was interesting. That's what he was calling it. But here, this worldwide rally is not about being anti anything. It's about being pro, your body, your health, your decision, what you want to put into your body. It's about pro. So it's interesting that this police officer just, just easy to come out of his mouth. Anti-vaxxers, the labels. So the protest was really good. I don't know how many people. Was it 1,000? Was it 2,000? Was it 800? Was it 1,200? It was a lot of people. And so it was a really good march. And it was a good period of time. But I did get to see some people get out of hand, as there's people on the sidelines wearing their mask. And, they got the blowhorn kind of yelling at them. And I want to say that we all should be bigger than that, no matter what. And especially if we are trying to bring people together. So there was a slight altercation I could see in a couple of times. For sure, the two I saw. A couple young ladies and another young lady too. And in the heat of the moment, sometimes you can see how things, but we really got to work on being a very cool, very calm, very considerate, very compassionate. They don't know any better, and they've made their decision and choice, and we want them to allow us to make our decisions and choices. So I think it's very, very important that, when I go down to the protests, I'm paying attention, how they're conducting themselves as we're marching. And it is important that we just try to be inclusive. We try to educate and not just tell them to take their mask off, or not just tell them that, they're doing their body harm. A few words kind of putting out there. We don't know. We don't know these people, so it's kind of tricky that way. Hi, Ferdinand. And it was, but all in all, the speeches that I heard were great. And they were right on point as to what we want to achieve. And they did talk about bringing together more and more police officers. and them being part of the solution big time across Canada and maybe as part of the world, where they step up and they partake in their oath that they took, the oath that they took. So always interesting to meet new people and connect and get to hear different stories. So one of the stories that was actually spoken, and it was over the loud mic, one of the gentlemen there, you don't always get to hear everything, especially if you're chatting a little bit and depending on where the sound is being thrown. But there, I think it was his mother, I'm not sure, don't quote me on it, but had gotten the injection and ended up in intensive care within a couple of days, having some sort of brain problem, and was in intensive care. So it's good that we're hearing first-hand stories about what's going on, because I'm leery about what stories are being put out there to raise whatever awareness. And I'm going to give you an example here. And this is an example of reading a couple of stories where, and these are just a couple of stories, but they're in mainstream media, let's call it. And both cases is where the individuals, they were older, both got, one was a gentleman, I think 91, and he by accident got a third dose, or he had his first dose before, and he got a second dose, and the very next day he got another dose, because I think he moved places or something, and he got a second dose, and went into shock, and they do say in the article he was recovering. The other lady, she might have been in her 90s too, or 80s, and they tried to get a hold of the pharmacist, and the interesting thing is, when in doubt, don't do it. But they gave her a second one, I believe, in the same day. So she moved, again, it was one of those situations she moved, and when she went into a catatonic state, where the daughter says, I don't believe, now this is a bit drama, we don't know, but she says, I don't believe I'll ever get to speak to my mother again. That she'll be feeding out of a tube, and there'll be $8,000 additional costs every year. I might have said every month, but I think I have them up here so I can post them. Those kind of things. And I got thinking about it. Why are they putting that? Because what I was mentioning, and I first heard this from David Icke, problem, reaction, solution. Right? So PRS. If you bring a problem in where the problem is, wow, we are giving people 2 doses, like we're doing things we shouldn't be doing. How do we fix it? This is kind of some of the train of thought that goes through people's minds. Surely the coroners, having discussed things with the coroner, that's what can happen. So we have a problem here, giving double doses or even additional dose back to back within the day, within days. And that, you can see, is highly problematic. So I got thinking, just going to put it out there. It's nothing that, I don't know of an absolute, but sometimes this whole problem, you create the problem, as in you put it out in the news, and then you have people, well, we don't want this happening again. What do we have to do? Do we have to chip him? Do we have to, attach some sort of a chip that we can read, get into AI, or what do we have to do? Because the pharmacist wasn't available, and you kind of have all this. But when in doubt, they shouldn't have given the second one. Really, to me, that's negligence, and if I were the daughter, I would be suing them. But who knows what'll happen. So that's what I want to talk about there. That it's definitely, when you create a problem, or you create the problem. I know in Ireland, reading history in Drogheda, and actually I met one of the people that I met today was actually from Ireland, from Drogheda. That was another person I met. He's Irish. And at Drogheda, there was a gentleman, Cromwell. He's not in my favorite books, but And what they say in history is how he got the English all riled up to mass murder. We're talking everybody they got through the castle walls. They were to murder everyone, children, mothers, grandparents, elderly, everyone, is he told them lies. We have a problem. These Irish people are killing us off in the millions. And he lied. And he got them all reacting. And as reacting that way, the solution was to kill everyone because they're a huge threat when that was not what happened. Right? So that was written in history books. Not that we have to believe everything that's written in history books, but at times there's probably enough truth to some of these things. So you kind of have to consider it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, I'm going to go back to money, the new currency. Maybe you haven't heard that there's supposedly a new currency in the U.S. I'm not sure if this is inclusive of other countries, but think quantum. So who knows? Time will tell whether that comes to fruition or not. So that's what I wanted to talk about. The AMP, AMP, was analyzing. Then there's the money and the programming, that comes around money. And programming comes from TV, television programming. They call it programming. So we have all of this going on. So that's what I want to bring up as well. It's definitely, as far as mind control goes, and you can do your own research, Obama approved something, and it was to do with brain. And if you go in and you look at some of the things they were doing, they were actually changing the chemicals in I think it was a mouse, so much so that all they had to do is do some frequency, and this mouse would react. This was this brain thing, so I can't remember what it was called, brain initiative, something like that. So Obama had it. I hear Obama had a very horrific childhood. He wasn't really maybe who we think he is, but at the same time, I've heard some crazy things, and if it's true, then he was abused, seriously abused, which, that's kind of crazy that way. What was the other thing? ABCs. Yes, so let's kind of get into something nicer. One of the things that's came to me in the ABCs, which we think of very simple, starting, with the ABCs, practical, is accepting. So accepting where we are today. This is where we are. This is, how we got here. Good for educating. What we can do about it. Good for educating. But accepting exactly where we are. That's why I tend to feel surreal when I see everything going around. Everything happening. The masks, so many masks. People high-fiving in Tai Chi classes that they got their first vaccine. Those kind of things. And but accepting. So that's always the step out of bed that you can do, is to accept. So accept where we are, even as people, to get to grow. We have to accept where we are right now. This is the present. This is the moment. Breathe. That's the B. B for breathe. And breath can actually bring in healing. It can change the brain waves, so you can get into a deep, calmer. And when you're calmer, you actually heal. You actually can think clearly. You're intuitive, can actually happen. C was for compassion. Not only for compassion for others, but also to grow compassion for ourselves. Because at this time, people can feel that they're not doing enough. They can feel that what are they? They're just one person. What can they do? So we need to have compassion for ourselves as well as for other people. Now, I want to bring in some stuff. I'm just going to go into a few things here in the news. George Soros is a person that you may not know about, but Myanmar seizes Soros accounts. Not going to get too many details there, but that would be a good thing. That's just talking about nefarious things. I've heard recently that there was an airline and the CEO got arrested, and the airline got shut down because they were part of sex trafficking, right? I mean, these kids got to get moved around. If you buy them, you got to get them. So, and then glitchy Biden. So I'm hearing about this, but I did watch the video where they think it's CGI and Biden's speaking and he's got his little hands, I don't say little, but he's got his hands, they look littler on the screen, and there is, you can see the microphones, you know, as they stick out, you can see like the tips of them, but his hand goes through one, it goes completely through one, and so it's like not there anymore. So something's going on, at least we can agree to that. And sealed indictments, over 230,000. I mean, that is unheard of in the usual. Now, sealed means we don't know what they are, but that. So I wanted to bring that up. That's Daniel from Alaska. He's really big on the child sex trafficking, so he covers that a lot, but he covers a few other things. And yeah, so there's a press conference going on with, this is the Children's Health Defense. So this is Kennedy, I think, Kennedy, right? Or Del Bigtree, one or the other. For some reason, I'm not thinking, I think it's Kennedy. But join the Children's press conference regarding the emergency injunction motion that they filed on, this would be the U.S. So all of these filings, all of these things that are kind of coming to play, and, you know, that's that. I had a conversation with somebody this morning, a customer, and they came and picked up some raw seal oil. And I kind of came up with the idea that it's a flu, because people have mentioned time and time again that, well, people are dying. Okay, well, initially I would say, yeah, well, people always died, right? But some people know certain people, and they know this person, and they had it this way, and, you know, there's many factors I'll bring up. I go, is this person wearing a lot of masks? Is this person got a lot of tests? Is this person... So there's always a lot of questions. Is there underlying health conditions? And without going into all of that, I talked to the 1,500 PCR tests that were, you know, as you go to the next level of determining if it's SARS-CoV-2 or not, and they were all influenza. So I've just been saying to people, you know, I think this is just a flu, and this all fits into the agenda of the Great Reset, as you hear, or the Reset, or whatever name they want to call it. I mean, you can't discount it, because the economic forum exists. It's right there. There are all kinds of information there. So it exists. And I think that calling it the flu might help people get past the death, you know, the fact that death is happening. And yeah, that's what I'm going to say with that. So that kind of came to me. And Daniel says good news, and then there's this press conference that's going on. Hope it goes well. It's supposed to be this Monday, but it still seems that, from everything I hear, there's little response, or court cases are being delayed. So we'll see what happens. I think the best thing to do is all people to really get a concrete piece of paper, and we all talk to people, we come together, this is enough, this is, you know, a year, and just open up, take off the signs, remove the signs, remove the masks, and carry on. And if people want to shop with their mask, they can shop with their mask. You know, they'll just have to deal with their fears and get more comfortable with it. With the more they learn, the more they talk to people, and it's right. That's how I see it panning out, ideally sooner rather than later. So, because anything else seems like it's banging on doors that nobody's answering. You know, nobody's answering. And yeah, but there's a lot of good news on that. The other thing I want to talk about briefly, these are just things that kind of come up in the last few days. Seth Godin. I like Seth. I like Seth Godin. You haven't heard of him. He's a marketing guru, and he actually brings up interesting things. I'm not saying I totally believe in them, but 10 reasons to write a book. Now, for anybody here who's thought about writing a book, would like to write a book, I'm just going to go through these 10 reasons. So it's just something interesting. And it's not that long. But, you know, I wrote my book for different reasons. And anytime anybody said, well, why don't you pay me, you know, let's pay $5,000 or $10,000 to come in a weekend workshop and you'll have your book done in 2 weeks. I wasn't going to do that. Oh, you know, come up with a deadline and then you'll have your book. Nope, I wasn't going to do that either. Now, I didn't know how much more research I was going to come upon and just kind of tie it all together, what was going to happen. So here, 10 reasons to write a book. More than 10, actually. Millions of books will be published this year, and for good reason. People rarely regret the effort. True. I do not regret writing my book. Everyone has their own, but here are some of the reasons to get you started. It clarifies your thinking. You do learn. Absolutely. It leaves behind a record of where you are in this moment. Well, in my case, it was 3 years, but it was somebody's record, what wasn't getting out there, the 7 stages of disease from 100 years ago. It's clearly not going to be a worldwide mass market bestseller, so you can focus only on the people who want to hear from you. True. I mean, anybody who has the expectation everybody in the world should read their book, well, no, just they're at different times, growth, whatever, something like that. It's a project that is completely and totally up to you. Agreed. Agreed. So I'm reading 10 Reasons to Write a Book, of Seth Godin. It is, at the end of the day. I was going to get somebody to, John, and if he's listening, John Yaniv, we were going to write together, but I soon could see that his writing style was, and how he's approaching, he's a writer, that's what he does, was so different from mine that it wasn't going to make sense. It was going to seem too choppy, and it was just not going to sound like me. Not that I'm saying that's what you need to do, but in my case, that's how my writing style is. It comes across. Okay, so because it's a generous way to share. Yeah, it is a generous way to share. If I think about only sharing the 7 stages of disease, doing all these Zooms, but even with Zoom, it means people only have so much energy to come and listen, and you have to think about all the repetition I did in the presentations. That has been almost 4 years ago. The whole reason putting it in right, it would be easier for people to understand it more deeply and for others to find it that they wouldn't normally find me, how they find the book. So as hobbies go, it's energy efficient and takes up very little space and is portable. Yeah, that makes sense. Just computer, well, in some cases, a typewriter, because then you get to write another one. Okay, if you choose to. It will increase your authority in your field. I didn't do it for that reason. You need to hear your ideas. We need to hear your ideas. They matter. Well, that's a nice one. I like to think that everybody's voice matters, whether you're an author or not. And then you become an author. Whippy-doo in my mind, but you know, some people like that, and I think that it's a task. If you've written a book, you have it's your baby or whatever it is. So I don't want to downplay that, but some people it does. It makes people feel comfortable that they're speaking to somebody who's written a book. It takes effort and discipline and focus and stuff like that. It's not that hard to publish it when you're done. So true. So true. Amazon had stepped into self-publishing, yes, a while ago, but they also had KDP, I think it's called, where you can upload it and they give you the format and then you get to double check it. So it's really Absolutely. The publishing is a bonus, a way to seek completion, but not the point of the exercise. Yeah. And it's not as lonely as you think, whatever that means. So there you go. I thought that was interesting, 10 reasons to write a book. And since I've written a book, I could speak to it personally, and you could hear some of the valid points that if it's inspirational for you to write a book, then awesome. So I did, I did most of mine from front to back. I did have John do the editing, which was very helpful. I did use Grammarly. I did reread it myself. I did have a couple of people read it and see if they found anything. Actually, probably read sections of it, 5, 6, 7 times. So I gave a very thorough of review that. Now I think there was one other thing to leave us on a lovely note here, but this is just before we go into the jokes. I don't know if anybody here has heard of Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks, and Abraham. She's been around for a very long time. Lovely, lovely, lovely. And Esther gets to communicate Abraham and Jerry. Channeling, let's call it channeling. That's probably the right word, but it's so logical. So let me read our latest, I think it was today, yeah, the spring one. To you because it's short and sweet, but then I can speak to it too as well. From the physical perspective, most of you believe that your beliefs are the right ones. This whole righteous thing and so forth. And if you disagree with someone, then they must be wrong. But from the non-physical standpoint, it is not seen as right and wrong. Okay? It is seen as the powerful diversity that stimulates thought, and from the non-physical perspective, you enjoy that diversity. And that's all there is. So it was kind of timing because I've been saying to people in the thinking, stepping away from the judgment, and stuff like that, is to don't look at things as right or wrong. And so it's strange. So in essence, I'll read this quickly again. From the physical perspective, most of you believe that your beliefs are the right ones. And if you disagree with someone, then they must be wrong. But from the non-physical standpoint, it is not seen as right or wrong, right and wrong. It is seen as the powerful diversity that stimulates thought, and from the non-physical perspective, you enjoy that diversity. So that was from February 15th, 1997. So she just brings up old ones. They did so much speaking. They traveled, Jerry and Esther traveled quite around, but just lovely. So let me just see if there's anything quickly that I wanted to bring up. There's many things that I have to kind of read. Yeah, I do have the incapacitated one, woman 95, so I will put that down. If you remember that, Richard Dreyfuss, and I am trying to remember the year, 90, it could be late 80s, but 80, 90, somewhere in there. And I believe, but I'm going to watch the video again, there's a part in there where they're told they can't breathe the air. You have to wear this oxygen mask. But at some point, he figures something out, or thinks something's wrong, and he takes off his oxygen mask and says, look, we can breathe. They're feeding us a bunch of BS. That makes me think of right today. But I'm going to watch it, and I'll let you know if it is. I might watch it tonight. So, interesting things. I'm going to post this up as well. This is a person who jokes. I don't think there's anything but there's all kinds of things that are coming through to watch, of course, for sure. So, yeah, let's get into some jokes here. So we mentioned about the money and the finances, just so that you know. It was created, as the Sapiens books has said. In the Sapiens book, one of the key things that he says in there, everything has been created. Everything has been created in the way we look and believe, and what's right, what's wrong, green grass, whatever garden, whatever size have. Everything's been created. So let's, okay, so this is the book, The True Remarkable Occurrences. And this is called Hair Trigger. This is around sport. Near Louisville, Kentucky, a rabbit reached out of a hunter's game bag, pulled the trigger of his gun, and shot him in the foot. The New Yorker, May 1947. It's a true story. True story. Anyway, that's the only little one I'm going to read of that today. There was a bunch of them there. And then I'm going to read the book of feckin' Irish slang. And, okay, so this is an expression, and it's go and shite. Go and shite. I am not in agreement with your suggestion. That's what it means. Go and shite. Okay, I'm not in agreement with your suggestion. Usage. The priest told me to abstain from bad language, so I told him to go and shite. There you go. Go and shite, and it doesn't sound as crazy as, you know, just sounds like a little flippant, I guess you could say. Not that he would have liked it. Okay, so this is interesting. Jokes, puns, and riddles. So, driving instructor. Now tell me, what would you do if your brakes suddenly failed to work? The student. Well, I try to hit something cheap. Okay, let me think. All right. Question. What part of the car is the cause of most accidents? What part of the car is the cause of most accidents? Answer. The nut that holds the wheel. There you go. Anyway, that'll be it for today. I could go on, there's lots in the books, but unless I kind of read them, then I don't want to say them. But I want to wish everybody a wonderful Saturday evening here. Enjoy. Just try and find joy, calm, and peace in your day. Accepting, breathing, and compassion, the ABCs, those kind of things. And there's nothing like being informed, or at least having an idea about what's going on instead of being in the dark, although they do say ignorance is bliss. And I'm not quite sure if I'd want to be there, but the idea is, I think a level of awareness is great to learn, to understand, to really be up on what's going on. And I think that's what most of us here are doing. We are reading a bit, doing our research, listening and learning, and hearing true stories from different people, which is really great. Go and shite. Ferdinand. Take care, everyone. We'll see you Monday live at 5 for sure. Enjoy until then, and we will see you again soon. Bye for now.